Hi, I'm Greg Aronowitz, and welcome to the Barnyard. Today is May the 4th, so of course I want to talk about Star Wars. I was 8 years old when I saw it, and it made a huge impression on me. It made me understand that people had to make things for science fiction and fantasy. Everything had to be imagined and then brought to life by hand, and that's what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be part of the Star Wars universe, and in 1995 I started a company called Legends in 3 Dimensions, which was a pre-painted cold cast porcelain statue company. My good friend Henry Unger was both my investor and my licensing manager, and he sat me down one day and said, all right, we're starting this company. The idea is to create statues of all the things that you love in pop culture, so give me a list of every license that you would like to have, and I'll see what I can do. So, of course, at the top of the list was Star Wars, and I thought that it was, it was like a wish list. I didn't think there would be any possibility that we could get the license for Star Wars. And Henry took some samples of my work and sent it up to Lucasfilm, and they loved it, and within a couple months, we were official Lucasfilm licensees. And it was a dream come true, and I got to start making statues. So I always thought, other than the 3 3/4 inch figures, there was a huge population of the Star Wars universe that just never really got exposure. I didn't want to start with Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie. I wanted to do the background characters. I wanted to do the Sand People and Yak Face and Salacious Crumb, and everyone at Lucasfilm was very receptive to that, and they said, great, but we want you to start with the Emperor. And I was like, oh, okay. He wasn't really the background character I thought I'd start with, but it turned out that at the time they were gearing up to do a project called Shadows of the Empire that was a multimedia, multi-platform thing with model kits and video games and comic books, and the Emperor was a central figure. So I wanted to start with Boba Fett, and they were like, we'll make you a deal. Like, we'll do like a 2-pack. Like, do the Emperor and Boba Fett can come out. So that was the beginning of the Legends in 3 Dimensions Star Wars bust line, and I want to show some of them to you right now. I just really wanted to create pieces that can fit in anywhere and didn't stand out as toys. I wanted high-end collectibles. I was actually trying to create art, was my goal. And I think one of the best pieces to show how all those philosophies come into play is Greedo. He just has a very classical form. I was able to use elements of the cantina to form his base. There's a lot of attention to detail, including all the spines on the back of his head, which are individually hand-laid with brass. And even though they were mass-produced, limited edition, I wanted to make sure that I executed it in a way that if you bought the number 1500 or number 1 or were holding my original, you couldn't tell the difference. Each bust has a individually designed base, and I would use inspiration from either a set or a prop or something connected directly with the character to form that base. A good example of a prop being used for a base would be the Tusken Raider. It's the kind of the knob of the gaffy stick that holds him up. I was also trying to use negative space and even keep the classical bust form, but branch out on different pieces where he has his bandoliers that cross. Another one that has, I think my favorite use of the negative space would be Boba Fett. So it's his backpack that's supporting his shoulders and head, and that's cantilevered off of the platform from Bespin, but it's all open under there, so the piece actually looks like it's floating. That piece originally was larger. It was almost the entire backpack, and it also had his poncho and the Wookiee braids. It was the first one that I sculpted once I had the license. Lucas just thought it was too chunky, so we cut it back, and it ended up being really nice, but we lost some of the details. I did an experiment across all of the licenses where I tried to do one bust from each franchise with a set of hands. And I thought that the most appropriate one for Star Wars would be the Cantina band member. he's playing his instrument and holding his hands. You know, you'll see a lot of busts these days where they'll do like full torso, and it's basically like a sculpture with no legs. And I really wanted to maintain what I consider the archetypal bust. So I did the hands in kind of like a free-floating, artsy form, and it's probably one of my favorite pieces from the collection. Not all of the pieces that I sculpted actually made it to market. What's funny is the very first Star Wars bust that I sculpted never got produced, and that was Admiral Ackbar. I originally intended for all the busts to have name plaques. It was just what I grew up with. I decided to go with the same kind of graphic design that used to be on the Kenner 3 3/4 action figures. I guess at that point Lucasfilm was trying to move away from the 80s stuff and kind of redefine themselves. They made the decision to not put names on the bus, which now I like much better. I think the busts look much more classy and classic without it. But I was upset at the time because I really liked the way that Ackbar looked. So they were like, you know, change that and you can produce them. And I was like, I don't want to change them. And so there's only actually one Ackbar in existence, which is the one we're looking at, and that's the prototype. I do deeply regret being young and stubborn because I wish this was out in the world. When I started thinking about the designs for the Star Wars box, I immediately knew that the only person in the world I wanted to actually do the artwork would be Drew Struzan. He did all of the movie posters that you know and love throughout the 80s, and E.T., Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, and of course many of the Star Wars posters. And after his amazing special edition versions, he kind of became the Star Wars guy. So it didn't make sense that myself or any other artist should do that artwork. Drew was awesome enough to do the artwork for me, and he kind of did you know, Rebels and Empire on either side of the box and a cool Star Wars logo, like a unique version on the top. And he asked me if on the back of the box I was going to put a photo of myself, because before you start going like, why do you have photos of yourself on the box? It was something I was really trying to do in the 90s, was promotion for the artist. There were very few artists or a few categories where artists were allowed to claim their work, and that was something I really wanted to change. So what I was trying to do with Legends is anyone involved in the project, if other people came on and built stuff for it or sculpted or painted, they would get credit and photos. And so when you bought this piece, you could actually see who was involved. And Drew said, are you going to do that with Star Wars? And I said, yes, I'll probably, you know, have a picture of me working on, you know, Boba Fett or something. And he said, well, would you like me to draw your portrait? Which, you know, as far as I'm concerned, is like the greatest honor that you can have. Drew is famous for his portraits, and he's my personal favorite artist. So to have him want to draw me was awesome. So I said, yeah, that would be amazing. He went away, he did the comp, he brought it over, and basically what he did was not only draw my face, but he put my head on the body of Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back, where he's on Dagobah with the X-Wing pilot suit. You know, the inner nerd in me exploded, but then the businessman in me was like, this is never going to happen. Like, there is no way that they're going to... Like, now I'm pushing all the boundaries of what is acceptable as a professional. But, you know, I was like, might as well try, right? So, showed the stuff to Lucas, and he personally actually said, yeah, you know what, that's totally fine, but lose the lightsaber because you're not a Jedi yet. So, Luke in the movie has his lightsaber hanging off the belt. So when Drew did the final artwork, he basically just took the lightsaber away and rendered me as an X-Wing pilot. And I was actually one of the first people that didn't appear in the movies to be portrayed as a Star Wars character on product. Lucasfilm asked me to be involved in the very first Star Wars celebration, and they wanted to have a special commemorative piece made that would be limited edition and used exclusively for the first ever all Star Wars convention. I had a full body Admiral Ackbar in the works, It was unable to fit into the rest of the Legends in 3D collection because it was full figure, and as an exclusive for the convention, they thought that Admiral Ackbar would be perfect. So the plan was that I would finish the sculpture, make 15 pieces that I would bring to Denver raw, and I would assemble and paint them live in front of an audience all weekend, and there would be charity auction, and 15 people would go home with this very exclusive collectible. A series of events that happened around the convention ultimately led to the charity auction being canceled, and I had a choice of just outright selling the pieces or taking them back and saving them for something else. So I decided that I really wanted them to go to something special, and I didn't want to just sell them. So I packed them up and put them on the truck and sent them back to LA. And somewhere in the course of them going from Denver to LA, most of them were lost and damaged. So there's only a few surviving pieces. Now, keep in mind, I'd only put together one prototype, and all the pieces that remain are still unfinished. So the first Star Wars Celebration was in 1999, so that's 15 years ago. Those molds are shot. So these pieces that I have are the last remaining pieces of the Admiral Ackbar collection. So this is what I'm thinking to celebrate May the 4th. I want to assemble, paint, and give away this last remaining Admiral Ackbar. But there's a catch. I want to boost up this channel a little bit. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers. I want to hit 25. If we can reach that goal and you can help, put your name in the comments and tell me that you want the Admiral Ackbar. And when we hit 25,000, I'll personally go through, find your comment, and get you the only other copy of one of my favorite sculptures.